Fights on cruise ships can be one of the biggest factors that will quickly see you getting a free transport off the cruise ship. It is definitely one of the main things you should avoid getting into, especially once you are on board, as it doesn't benefit anyone that is involved. And as a crew member, I've spent most of my working days at sea for many cruise lines, and I can tell you that there have been many cases I have witnessed firsthand where guests do go over the top and get into serious brawls and fights that even lead to injury and the intervention by the medical and security staff on board. So in this video, I will share with you some of the top causes that I have seen personally erupted into fights on board, so you can know how you can easily avoid them, because really in truth, majority of the cruisers I've met on board are there for the fun of it and not necessarily there for any conflicts. Just before we continue though, I would highly appreciate it if you could just hit that subscribe button below, as I will continue to bring you the valuable information, tips, tricks and advice you will need for a successful vacation. So make sure you do us both a favor and become a supporter of the channel. Alright, let's continue. I may be starting off a little spicy with the first reason here as to how fights can easily happen on board, as one of the main causes for huge fights that I have seen is having cheating spouses on board. Yes guys, people do actually go on cruises and get caught cheating, and in most cases, it never ends well for all of those who get caught up in such situations, as at any time tensions can erupt, huge fights can happen, people getting hurt and even experiencing bodily injuries. Not to forget the emotional damage that the affecting spouses will sometimes have to endure while they are on board or being escorted off the cruise ship. But it all depends on how big of a fight that had happened. In some ways, the fights over cheating spouses doesn't always erupt into physical altercations, but you can sometimes see the verbal fights happening as well, and sometimes spouses requesting to be separated on board. The honest truth is that these situations can get even crazier, and that is if both partners are still on board, having to share the same room and all of that. So, as what we will witness on board is the partners throwing criticism at each other, everyday arguing and visibly upset with each other. One thing to note though is that people who get into verbal altercations are more than less likely to be escorted off the ship, as opposed to those who actually cause physical harm to others. So it is not uncommon if spouses argue without fighting to remain on board, but majority of the time separated from each other. If your cruise is already paid for, why should you risk the chance of getting kicked off anyway, and not just continue to try and get your money's worth from the rest of the cruise? The next big reason that I've seen to cause fights on board is when guests become disrespectful to others, and this sometimes can even be directed to crew members. There was a special case where two men on board had gotten into a verbal altercation, all because one of the men was being disrespectful to a crew member, and one of the other guests decided to step in. With the other guest deciding to step in though, it ended up further agitating the disrespectful guest to the point he even started to be disrespectful to the other surrounding passengers. The main thing though is that once a guest is being disrespectful, especially to the crew, just know that the person who tries to intervene will always be protected from being removed from the ship, as the crew will always have the back of the defending guest. So I just thought I would just point that out for you guys to know. The crew will be able to hint at the security who they should remove from the ship, so it's best to always be on the good side of the crew members, because we appreciate those who will take a stand for us. The next big thing to cause fights on board cruise ships is the fact that some overly intoxicated guests will sometimes clash with each other over the simplest of things. I've worked behind the bar where guests mistakenly takes another guest's drink, spill it over, knock it over completely, and those things can erupt into big fights quickly, no matter how you try to calm the situation down. The thing is, drinks are endless on board, guys, and if it's a situation where your drink is knocked over, spilled or mistakenly taken, there is absolutely no need for any fights to happen on board, as you can just kindly explain to the bartender what had happened, and then they will in most cases try to help you out with another drink. But most guests do not know this, especially on the cruises that are not all-inclusive, as all-inclusive cruises do not have to worry about drinks and their packages. But for cruises where you have to pay, well, you might get annoyed that somebody knocked over your drink, which is understandable, because if they do spill it over, knock it over, take away, you're going to be agitated and get upset because of that. But like I said before, it is best to avoid the altercation in the first place and just go directly to the bar and explain your situation. As crew members, we are trained to be understanding and be fully service oriented because our main aim will be to always keep the guests happy on board. Now, the next reason why fights on cruise ship happen so frequently can be for even stupid reasons such as their personal belongings being removed from the laundry or from the wash cycle. I've seen impatient guests who go to the personal laundry areas on board and purposely remove other guests' clothes to put theirs in the wash. And those things honestly do lead to loud altercations where security have to get involved. The hotel manager and even the attention of the captain, as touching other passengers' personal belongings can be deemed as a serious offense on board, and one that you should definitely avoid. My advice is if the laundry areas are full, you would just need to be patient or go at the times when the laundries can be expected to have less traffic. It's best to do this than to end up in a serious altercation on board over some clothes. Another silly reason why fights happen on board cruise ships is what we call the pool chair tenants, or even some cases other guests may even have different words for them. I don't want to get involved with that. But yes, this very exact thing can really erupt into huge fights on board. And as crew, we witness passengers who take liberty of the fact that they can go ahead and set up themselves at the pool chair, go away for extended periods of time without being mindful of others who wish to use these chairs as well. This can be visibly upsetting for others who want to have access to the pool chairs as well, and some guests even go ahead as far as removing the belongings of other passengers who left them there in the first place. Passengers who leave their belongings behind do it as an act of reserving the pool chairs even if they are gone for long periods of time. I honestly think there should be a policy put in place for this. For if a guest leaves their belongings at a pool chair for over an extended period of time, then it should be removed to allow other passengers to be able to benefit from the lounging chairs as well. But for the cruise lines I have worked with, we haven't seen these things implemented and can sometimes affect the crew because we will get the complaints if we allow it, and also get the complaints if we try to intervene. So for crew, it's rarely ever a winning situation, as if we go ahead and don't do anything about it, there will be complaints made. And if we go ahead and remove passenger belongings that is left on the chairs, there will also be complaints against us, and even in some cases there will be reports of missing items. So what we do, we try to avoid these complicated situations as much as we possibly can. But what ends up happening is that sometimes the guests will get into altercations with each other over the pool chairs that can ultimately lead into fights, arguments, verbal name calling, and every and anything else you can think of under the sun. I wish I knew what could be the best way to resolve these issues, but there is just no one particular safe answer to give, guys. I'm totally sorry. That will be able to please both sides of the spectrum, as it can come off as some form of favoritism, as well as in some cases guests taking about their statuses with the cruise line and why they should be treated differently from others, or why they should be given preference to certain things on board. And truthfully, what I can hope for in these situations though is that the guest who leaves their belongings should be a little bit more mindful of the time they spend away from their personal belongings that is left behind at the pool chairs, as it can be very unfair to others and can spiral into guests conflicting with each other and even others adapting the same selfish mindset. In the end, it's undeniable that on some cruises, people will just go so they can give off a persona of being the tough guy and whatever, and even offer no form of understanding to each other on board. But when it comes down to it, is it truly worth it, especially knowing you paid for your cruise to end up being kicked off and losing your money? To me, the obvious answer is no. But for some, there's no case of logical thinking. If you've enjoyed the information from this video, I am now asking you to leave a like, comment below if you've ever witnessed any altercations on board your cruise or seen passengers getting kicked off for it. Also, watch my next video that you may see here on the screen. It's Onik, your cruise employee, and I'm out.